Hello, everyone. I see some folks are starting to trickle in. We will get started pretty soon. Hi, Joelle, Casey, Christina, Rebecca. I think the chat should be working if you guys want to introduce yourselves in the chat. Welcome back if you have been to our previous 2 LST webinars. We're happy to be back with Craig and excited for what he's going to talk about today. Janine is with me here. I think most of you might know her. And if you haven't met Craig already, he's Vice President of the National Health Promotion Associates in White Plains, New York. So yeah, without further ado, I'll kick it over to you.
There we go. I'm unmuted. Sorry about that, everybody. We'll just edit that out. Anyway, it's great to have everybody here. Thank you very much for your time on this busy day. I know we're just coming off a holiday weekend, but some of the things we're talking about today are really important, not only as we look to start a program, to be in the middle of a program, even if we've been doing a program for many, many years. So I'm excited to be here with you. If you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A. We'll probably be together today. I've got us down for about 60 minutes, depending upon questions, things like that. So if there's anything else, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay. Oops, now I've got to move things around so I can see what's going on. All right, so my presentation session, really, to be honest with you, was something that I've been talking about for a long time, and it kind of hit me when I was talking about what it means to be a prevention practitioner and a provider and all the great things that we do, but sometimes no one really knows about it. So I kind of, in my training workshops, refer to that as my little prevention island, or LST island. So what I'd like to do is talk about some of that today. Because we are doing some of the greatest work that might be done on campus to help students for not only the short term, but long term, and building, obviously, life skills. But a lot of that does have to start with activities that might center around awareness, getting buy-in. Once they're aware of what we're doing, how does it relate to them? And then, of course, continuing support for our prevention programs, which is critical. Now, what I'm not talking about today is sort of financial support or buy-in in terms of granting funds or resources or budgeting, but everything that we talk about is a critical component to that. So, for example, without awareness, without understanding, without the benefits of a prevention program on campus and all the things that it can do and it can bring, it's unlikely it will lead to funding, I should say, as the program or any program becomes more and more successful and people are aware of it. So for today, we're just going to talk about island. What's this prevention island you're talking about, Craig? We're going to talk about some raising awareness ideas. I'll give you some examples. We'll talk about getting buy-in. I'm going to probably intermingle raising awareness and getting buy-in a little bit there, but I am looking forward to your questions as we go through this. I'll give you some examples and some resources that we've created, but we're also open to helping you do some of these things. Now, some of the strategies that we'll talk about or examples that I'll bring up, to be honest with you, can be implemented very easily and very quickly. I'm not talking about things where we have to go out and do full-on PSAs or very robust, intricate contests and different things like that. Sometimes it just starts with the teacher right next door. So what I'd like to do is then we'll finish off with Q&A. Take whatever you have throughout the session. If I see something that pops up and it's relevant, I'll go ahead and get into that. So related to my prevention island, what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, in the chat, when you look at this picture, what are some of the words that pop up in your head? Anything? Isolated, lost. Oh, I hadn't even, that's a good one. Yes, isolated, lost, searching, absolutely. In many ways, wanting to be found, right? And sometimes there's only so much that you can do. And that's really the thrust of today's session. Now, prevention is one of the greatest things that I've been involved in my career. I'm a former teacher. I guess I don't know if you ever stopped being a teacher, but have been in the classroom. I also do teacher training. I work with sites to implement curricula. And one of the things that I know is when we talk about it, sometimes we'll be doing some of the most powerful and impactful work, and the people right next door that we share a wall with, or maybe even share the class with, don't know what's going on. So I kind of call that my prevention island. Now, being on an island is okay. At times, we want to be able to have the autonomy to do the things that we need to do to get the job done. But we also want people to know what we're up to, where we are, how they can find us, and more importantly, how they can help. So a lot of this does have to do with this. Now, I'm not going to go into questions really about this picture, but really words that come to mind when you look at this picture. How would you apply this to, say, prevention classes? So for example, if we had isolated, searching, what are some of the words that pop up when you look at this group of people? Youth, what else? Team, fun, together, absolutely. Happy. So when we can share our experience with others, I mean, this is all things that you already know. All of these words are really important, but the reason why I'm bringing them up is sometimes, not that we have a lonely existence in prevention, but sometimes we want to make sure that other people become part of our team. And how do they become part of our team? First and foremost, we have to make them aware of what we're doing, but also more important, how they benefit from the hard work that we do in our prevention classes. And I don't mean anything where we want to walk around banging our drum about all the great things that we're doing and how they're beneficiaries, but one of the key words I see here is teamwork, partnership, things like that is really what we're trying to establish. And I think when it comes to that, the sooner we can get that established, the better. And as an example, one of the most successful implementations that I've heard of was somebody who, as soon as they decided they were going to apply for a grant, so they weren't even in on a program yet, they hadn't even decided on their application. What they did is they wound up going to meet with the administrator and the teachers, and they were trying to identify things that were important to them or considerations and challenges that they're dealing with. And then that information became part of their implementation and also part of their reporting when they were giving feedback to those groups. So as an example, one of the things I think when we're implementing prevention, particularly programs that center around risk and protective factors, life skills, if you will, and the LST program is no exception. I'm using an example of a list of skills that are covered in the LST program just to set some context here. So for example, you have skills that are in the personal self-management area or arena, substance-related skills or resistance skills, and then of course we have social and communication skills. But what I'd like us to do is I'd like to know which of these life skills, and you can just type them in, give me one or two of these life skills that you think supports classroom behavior, encourages positive or supports pro-social behavior. Communication skills, excellent, yes. Social skills, absolutely. How about making decisions? That also has to do. Different things like that. Coping with anxiety and stress, very good. So a lot of these skills, resolving conflicts, could certainly have its place naturally in terms of classroom behavior. All teachers are looking to remedy these. And if these are skills that you've identified that students can carry with them, not only now, then when they learn them, but into life, it's reasonable to assume that if we encourage these skills with our teaching peers or our school partners to reinforce what we're doing, again, here we are back to awareness, then behavior could change. Is it going to change overnight? A lot of these things that we do together, to be honest with you, is like turning a cruise ship. It's not going to spin and turn in the other direction right away, but all it takes is one positive opportunity, and then another, and then it starts to become consistent, and then we start to see these changes. How about academic performance? Any of these skills jump off the page that would support improved, or perhaps common sense might tell us would lead to better academic performance across all student body? Decision making, absolutely. When we're looking to identify things where we've got a situation where I have a personal conflict, meaning an activity or my academics, other things like that. Certainly self-image, self-improvement. I want to make sure that I have goals. Not just, I don't mean goals in terms of a long-term plan, but just simple steps and things that we can do. But also, I'm not engaging in substance use, which is allowing me self-management. Absolutely. So some of those resistance skills related to substances, certainly coping with anxiety and anger, particularly coping with anxiety and stress, certainly have benefits in certain, in all walks of life, but in certain academic subjects. So communication skills, social skills, all of these things certainly are beneficial. So school connectedness, I'm not going to go through the same thing again, but improving many of these skills also does that. So students who feel safe, who feel respected, who feel equal, but also understand themselves, that are making healthy choices, but also have the skill set to socialize, communicate, and interact with others. In addition to that, standing up for themselves, standing up for one's beliefs. And then, of course, resolving conflicts in a pro-social way, in the sense that we want to navigate a relationship or navigate a conflict, as opposed to react in a negative way. Perhaps they would also use some of their coping with anger or stress skill set that they learn. So a lot of different things can have a positive impact on the entire school. Now, what I am going to say right here, because some of you may have been in my other one about fidelity or program modification, these are very hard indicators to pin down when it comes to implementing a short-term prevention program. I mean, LST, for example, as short as 6 sessions, longest is 15. I mean, those are very short windows to say, oh, this had a significant impact on all of these areas. But it makes sense, because we know that students who are behaving in class have many of these skills, or are proficient or have started to acquire them. Those that perform better academically than their peers perhaps are already honing some of these skills or have gotten them somewhere. And school connectedness, as it relates to safety, well-being, understanding, different things like that. These are also indicators that every school administrator, principal, superintendent, school board are trying to impact in a positive way. So connecting our program. And the other thing, I was a health teacher. No health text that I ever taught really had the potential to change this, the entire scope of the entire school or district. So I think there's a lot of noble work in things. So when I look at subjects, which subjects in school do you think benefit from learning life skills, and what skills specifically would you assign to that school? And there's a reason why I'm asking the question. So for example, in physical education, it would be, one of them could be goal setting. Today, I've decided I'm going to not just participate, but I'm going to try and work with a new partner. That might be an example. So in that case, I'm not only using a little social skills, some decision making as well. Let's take a subject, pick a subject, and then immediately following that subject, just tell me what life skills do you think benefits that academic subject. Health is the obvious one. Social studies, yes. Learning how to manage in society, English, communication, excellent. These are all great responses. How about math? Are there any skills in the list that would benefit that math teachers might be particularly excited about in that list that we were looking at before, or life skills? Problem solving, absolutely. Stress and anxiety management, coping with anxiety, absolutely. Thank you very much for that one. Those are all skills. And the reason I bring this up is making decisions in science is another great one. The reason I'm bringing this up is sometimes we think about the time that we're partnering with a teacher and not the actual subject or goals that they have in general for their students. So the reason I bring this up and try to align it to a particular subject, it's not that we can go over to the math teacher and say, hey, I've got a solution for you. You need to get your kids to start to use these skills. In many implementations, these students that we're working with are learning these life skills, and then they're moving on to another subject for the other 5 to 6 hours in the school day. However, the skills that they learn in our class, for example, let's take coping with anxiety as it relates to testing and other things. Math is at one where I know a lot of math teachers mention that as a challenge, trying to help students relax so that they can perform, or actually any test. In that case, what we want to try to do is keep in mind and think of these skills as solutions, and then apply those solutions to the subject matter and help that subject matter expert understand what the skill is and how they and their students could benefit. So I'm not saying it's a magic formula, but I know that me personally, I'm a lot more receptive when someone comes to me and says, rather than just, hey, Craig, this is a great program we've got going on. It's going to help kids keep off drugs, help them make good decisions. I'd appreciate it if you could support it or mention it in your class and remind them of the skills during math or any subject. In that case, yeah, that's good, but I can do better. I might actually try to think about how it might connect. And it doesn't have to be exhaustive. If you think it's stress management or anxiety techniques, coping with anxiety techniques, then talk to that teacher and ask them. If you don't mind, you might find before a quiz, maybe not a major test, we can lead up to that. Remember your coping skills that you learned in Mr. Zettle's class for life skills. And then you might even give them a cheat sheet, give them 3 bullet points of what those techniques are so they can mention it to them. So there's a lot of ways that this starts to bring awareness around, but guess what happens then? This student suddenly is now, holy smokes, I can't believe that Ms. Smith knows what Mr. Zettle's teaching. So all of a sudden their world starts to come together a little bit more. So those are all simple strategies that we can do, but getting others involved, it first starts with how we're going to address them. So in my opinion, all subjects in school benefit from students having life skills. It could be one skill, could be all skills that are covered in any one curriculum. Because as we know, personal self-management skills, or let me take a step back, pro-social and pro-health skills as they center around self-management, socialization and communication, as well as resisting pressures and substances, absolutely makes for a better student in school. And then, of course, the long-term effect, and we'll talk a little bit about this later, is it could have a positive impact on not only suspension rates, discipline referrals, not to mention graduation rates long-term. So again, there's a lot of things. Now, I don't want anyone to think that when I go into this consulting mode and I start talking about these things, that I go in and have this Band-Aid for all woes that a school or district might have. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm trying to do is help them lead, because they're all busy just like we are. Many professionals, administrators, parents, caregivers, teachers, community leaders. So I'm just trying to help connect the dots in as simple a way as possible, and then let them start to formulate a way that we could work together and that they could support these, because they'll benefit. But in order for me to help them understand how to benefit, I need to understand what's important to them. What are their goals? What's important? What are they measured to? And that all starts with raising awareness. Now, I'll be honest with you, I do a lot of sustainability training. I do a lot of, I haven't since COVID, but we do a lot of workshops. I myself do them. We talk about raising awareness and techniques. It's interesting if you put a lot of teachers and practitioners in breakout rooms and ask them to come up with techniques that they would use to raise awareness about their program. And bar none, the top three are brown bag lunch. Why doesn't everybody bring their lunch to the common room on Friday? And I'll tell you all about our program. I'll send an email out to all the staff. I'm going to post a flyer in the teacher's lounge or the administrator's lounge. Or let's go with one bonus. I've heard people, which isn't a bad strategy, but put a little note in each teacher's inbox or mailbox. They still have a physical box there. Just saying, hey, I'm teaching life skills. Ask me if you have any questions. Those are all, I don't want to say great, but they're all good ideas, and they're all very quick and easy to implement. But what I want you to really focus on, or what I'm always trying to think about, is how do we put our time and effort where the biggest return is? I don't know about all of you, but many of us are not inclined to rush to a brown bag lunch around the table where we can talk about something that I really don't understand and I'm not quite sure what it's in. So I'm often likely to cancel or something. We get emails all the time. They get buried. It starts to become background noise. Administrators are very busy. Notes in mailboxes are nice. So all I'm saying here is when we're raising awareness, we can still keep it simple, but we want to take baby steps, if you will, that allow us to get to a point where we're getting the support and we're getting the partnership that we hope to achieve, but we're not starting out with things that, just be honest with you, wouldn't work for us. And that's kind of my test with these things is, well, Craig, if somebody sent this to you, would you want to jump up or would you be like, gosh, I got a really busy schedule? And you suddenly find more ways not to participate than ways to. So raising awareness can be simple, but let's not just go for the quick activities. We want to go for the long-term win. And what that means is just start simple and start small. And some of you may have seen this in other sessions that I've done, but I have a real simple philosophy when it comes to this. This is a philosophy that's used in business. It's used in marketing. I use it a lot when I'm working and consulting with people. First of all, and especially when I'm looking to partner, because a partnership is something where there's give and take, and we're both achieving our expected goals, and of course, moving things forward in a way that we expect to. So first thing you want to do, obviously, is engage them at a higher level. So what we want to do is get them thinking. What does this mean for me? So touch their heads, engage their hearts. So it has to be something that's relevant and passionate for them. Now, when I apply this model, these 3 steps, if you will, for different, if I'm talking to teachers, it's a little different versus community administrators versus agencies. And then we want to give them something to do, something concrete that they can feel like that, they're an active participant. It's not too much. I may have to help them by providing certain things for them, but getting them to take action so that they can also be an active participant and recipient of the benefits. So we want to engage them with their heads, getting them to think about something and understand how it's meaningful for them, engage their hearts, tap into that passion or what's important to them. Math teachers aren't just teaching for equations. They're teaching about how to help students navigate or tap into that passion for that subject that they chose as their profession. And it wasn't just because they like numbers. There are lots of applications, things that they want students to be able to succeed with in the future. So let's try to tap into that. And of course, giving them something to do can be as simple as what we already talked about, making a mention to somebody or talking about how they might use a particular skill or a simple reminder. The only thing is, these are colleagues that are a little outside our world. And when I come back to this island concept, what I mean is, if I'm in the center, how far out can I do my spiral? If I go to teaching colleagues, administrators, community, families, community leaders, how far does my spiral go? Oftentimes it just circles around myself, because I know that they're aware of it, I think, but we want to start to connect that spiral, and this is where we start. So let's talk about some of these groups that we would do that with. So the first thing we want to do is, of course, welcome all people to be aware of what we're doing. I'm not talking about active participation. Sometimes what happens is we view awareness raising or partnership as, you do something, I'll do something. That is what it is at its most basic, in its most basic form. However, in this case, we just want to start with them knowing what's going on. So we're starting with our colleagues. How do I get, and I can tell you time and time again, because I have a lot of colleagues that have been teaching the program for many, many years, a lot of colleagues that teach prevention or other subjects, and they're doing these great things, and the teacher that shares the wall next door has no idea what's going on. But yet when they talk to each other, they're talking about how those types of life skills or situational skill building opportunities start to help students in all walks of life. So we start to connect with people. So in this case, we want to address and welcome all colleagues, administrators. It doesn't mean that they come into the class and give a talk about the importance of these skills, what it means to them, giving examples. But these are all people that we want to welcome. Now, we may not be able to welcome all of them at the same time. But what I like to do, again, with my spiral analogy, I like to start with the people who are closest to me. First and foremost are my fellow students. Can I help students help other students learn a little bit? And then I can control what I can control. And I'm going to go talk to my colleagues, my peers, who may just be right next door, might even be sharing a desk with me, helping them understand what's going on, not telling them about my day, but inviting them to understand what my day will be and how, and then get some ideas on how they might benefit or we might benefit together. In addition to this, students, greatest ally we could possibly have. This is kind of common sense in the sense that I know all of you practice this, but sometimes when we're on campus, we forget about this because everybody's busy. The first thing I actually should say, the first bullet point, is understand their schedule and the time crunches that they're under. In many cases, the first thing that I want to do before if you are a community agency talking to schools, if you are a teacher in one subject area and the other, if you're on campus, you're probably already on the same district or school's calendar. So you know your holidays, professional development days, weather days, et cetera, things like that. So you know when things are all holidays, when things are going to kind of be a little compressed, and everyone's trying to navigate as best they can. If I'm a third-party provider, I want to go to the district website and I want to get that information, just because I don't want to come on the Friday before a holiday. It seems like it might be easy, but number one, the mindset of the person there, they get time off too. In addition to that, they may be trying to make up for lost time and get things done before they leave, not just in the classroom, but paperwork and other things. So helping to understand their schedule. The other thing is, by getting to know them, I don't necessarily mean that, you know, we go have a cup of coffee, have a long chat, but they're teaching math. Just a simple question like, what got you into the profession of teaching math in the first place? Or what is it that you like about teaching social studies? And how do you help your students understand the importance of social studies? Why is it important to them? Just little things like that. Simple questions. We did a lot of that in the learner engagement piece that we did a while back. Think of that with adults. It's the same thing. You'll get a lot of information. Also, know what their standards and their goals are. You don't have to do a lot of research. And again, I'm only talking about taking one step at a time. But if I outside provider coming into a school and I'm going to be taking over time for health class, one of the things I might want to know is, are there health standards? Does that teacher have to teach to those standards? And then helping that teacher understand that what I'm doing is reinforcing what they're doing, and then how they can help me as well. And now all of a sudden we're working together. And then I might do the same with another subject area or something like that. They also can be a great source of information in terms of best times to reach teachers, what resonates best with them in terms of schedules, and whether it's an administrator teacher meeting or something like that. They'll give you lots of ideas. We also want to connect skills to support their goals. So if someone already mentioned right away, science, making decision, coping with anxiety applies to so many subjects. Making decisions applies to a lot of different things. Problem solving. So how do we connect those with them? And I think one of the challenges that we have in prevention is that our peers look at us as drug prevention, or and that's it. But the reality is we are coping skills for life. And that's what we're teaching all of our students or participants that come into our prevention world, is how to build or learn these skills, build their own toolkit, so to speak, and to apply them as they progress from adolescence into young adulthood, into adulthood. But oftentimes we get oversimplified. Oh, that's drug prevention. Well, no one will make a logical leap from drug prevention to mathematics or to social studies or to science. So we've started to adopt, or I know I have, and my colleagues, we're talking more about what we can do as opposed to what we are. And I'll talk more about that when we talk about some of these resources. Also, keep in mind, give them some resources to help them. And I don't mean take home reading. Last time I said, ask somebody or encourage somebody to give resources, they handed somebody a copy of a paper that was written by a developer. And I was like, well, that's okay, but would you read it? You really have to get my attention and get me passionate and participating and really getting involved before you hand me an 8-page research paper that summarizes everything. And by the way, it's probably not something that I'm used to reading, so it may not capture my attention. So what I mean by giving them resources is, let's take that math teacher again, a colleague. You're teaching math. We're learning some techniques that I think would be fantastic in students practicing before, either the night before they take a test or maybe the morning when they get to campus. I'm going to give you, if you don't mind, we talked about it. Here's a little, I'm just going to give you a Post-it note with 3 techniques on it. If you just remind the students, they'll know what you're talking about. And if they don't, would you mind asking them? So tell them, in Mr. Zettle's class, we learned coping with anxiety techniques to help us calm down. Taking tests or doing our work today is going to help us with that. Can anyone, here are the techniques that you learned, go ahead and use them. If they say, I have no idea what you're talking about, then ask them, what techniques would you use to calm down? So it doesn't have to be a lesson, but I can give you a little primer, and it's literally a Post-it note with 3 bullet points on it. They don't have to fully understand it, but they hopefully will be engaged enough to ask. So I want to give them certain resources. It doesn't have to be, sometimes as educators, we get a little too excited about it. I have one participant who is wanting to make posters and PowerPoint presentations and all of these things. And I was like, just keep it simple, give them a piece of paper, ask them if they have any questions, ask them how it did, follow up, and no matter what, just keep it as simple as possible. Then you might want to work with them on, hey, how can we get you some visuals in here that you could point to, or those things may come. So colleagues are critical, but oftentimes in our island, so to speak, no one knows. I mean, we could have our own situation where we're doing all these great things, and like I said, we share a wall with somebody. Administrators are in an entirely different group in terms of getting awareness and buy-in from. Many times we want to only talk about money with them, but in my opinion, what we really need to do is understand the challenges that they are held accountable for. In many of my sustainability training workshops, or when I go into help a community agency or talk to a school, I want to know what the board policies are for the district and or that specific school. The reason, and you can find them very easily, just go to their website. And if you don't know what they are, there's usually a search bar, just type board policies. Chances are it'll lead you to a link or some explanation. Now, you don't have to memorize them, but almost every district not only has policies related to substance use and prevention, and of course, what they do in the event that someone is engaging in those behaviors. But there are also a lot of indicators that are mentioned in there that are important, but may thematically tie into this. So it's not that you're going in to promise that you're going to change the school climate because of the program you're bringing in and your delivery of it. But if you know that you're already going to be helping them no matter what with violence prevention, reducing bullying on campus, all of these skills, smoking, vaping, all of these are targets that they have to reduce. So why not use your program, tell them you're doing these things, but also that they understand that it may also be beneficial to other areas. Like a lot of administrators are looking at academics versus discipline referrals. Reducing those just by a little bit can have a significant impact on a school administrator or the environment. And again, we're not promising or going in saying, hey, we've got this, but it helps them understand that you're not coming to ask for time or money or resources without understanding what's important to them. And that's just something that we all appreciate. I also would ask them to prioritize for me, because if you look at any board policy or things that any school principal or administrator has on their plate, there's a long list, and it can be quite lengthy. But in that case, what are the top two for you? And chances are one of them may align to behavior in some way. Another one may align to academics. So if you can think about how those might relate, that might be a way that you can, again, relate to an administrator and help them understand. But keeping in mind, they don't have a lot of time to read a lot of things. And unfortunately, it's our job many times to help them understand as opposed to just tell them or give them resources. Also, understanding how and when these priorities are measured. Do they look at them quarterly? Do they look at them every annual or annually? When are they meeting with each other as administrators? Not to ask too many intrusive questions, but if they're measuring school climate or behavior, is that on an annual basis, or do they do a check-in in the first semester? Because what I'd like to know is, how are things going? I've been teaching this program for almost 3 months now with 15 sessions. Have we noticed any positive changes, anything like that? So administrators can be huge allies, but also get them involved, but involved in a way that doesn't take up a lot of their time. If you give an administrator a cheat sheet and say, whenever you get a chance, if you want to stop by my class, I teach Tuesdays at 9 o'clock. I know the kids would love to just see you pop in your head. If you're over in hallway H, it would be nice to pop in and just say, hey, hello, or come in and ask the kids something. That would be great. Or if you want to come in at the end of class, they're always wanting to show their face and to be connected with the students in a personal and professional way. So in that case, invite them to do that in your classes as well. They're not there to judge. You're not teaching a subject that is really, it is measurable, but not like you would whether you learned how to conjugate verbs or something like that, but it is something that they can see. In terms of families, I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. When we talk about some of these things, we're looking at what opportunities are there to reach families. There are many opportunities on campus. So what I'll do is, part of this is we're going to talk about some ways that you can do this, and I'll give you some examples. There are lots of different ways to reach a family: through the administration, through counselors, through the teacher. But unfortunately, just like the brown bag social to learn about my program, oftentimes it's like, here's an email or a document. Can you forward this to the parents? That's good, but many are busy, and a lot of that, even the classroom teacher will tell you, look, I'm sending them something every single night, and half the time some of it goes unnoticed because they're being bombarded by the other, bombarded is the wrong word, but their inbox is full. So in that case, what opportunities are there to reach them outside of those common communication channels? So it may be that you ask your students to take home a question for their parents, like, where did you learn, how did you learn life skills? Or who taught you how to make decisions? Or how did you learn how to make decisions? So it could be a simple question like that to connect, and then parents might be asking. Other ways to reach them certainly is talk to your peers and your anyone else on campus. What has been effective? What strategies have they used in the past? What challenges exist in communicating to families? Many of them might share with you that 50% of our student population is, our parents are non-native English speakers. I talked to one district, they had, I think, over 300 dialects of different languages. Those are real challenges. Now, can we meet all of those? No, but it's good to know before we send a lengthy document or something like that, but also understanding challenges related to the best time of day, what has worked for them in terms of strategy. And then, of course, when is the best time to communicate with parents? Are they most actively engaged at the beginning of the school year? That might be a good time, even though your life skills may not start until October 1. End of August might be a good time to kind of put something out there to encourage them to ask their child or student about the skills that they learn in class when that comes up. Now, I understand engaging parents can be a bit of a difficult situation in some communities, or a challenge. The reality is what we're trying to do is help parents understand that LST, or particularly LST, because we develop resources for that, is really about pro-health and pro-social skills. There's not a lot to it outside of that context. And really, in that case, we want to help them understand the benefits of the program, not necessarily what it is. Now, that's all transparent as well. But again, we want them to understand that their child's health and well-being within their own expectations and belief are certainly protected in a life skills training class. And what I mean by that is I'll share with you some resources that we've put together that you can combine to help in that regard. Now, as far as engaging the community, this is one of the best strategies I've ever heard of. And it's there's a former school administrator that I used to work with. First thing he did, he implemented a prevention program. Now, this was a school-based prevention program that was adopted by the school, taught by school teachers. So I'll go through the timeline, so just please bear with me. In this case, what happened was, administrator, he says, hey, I love this program. We've got a violence problem or challenges with violence on campus. I'm going to implement this program. I've been to the sessions. I talked to the people. I talked to the counselors. We're doing this. And he put it in the teachers' hands. Teachers were resistant to it, although no one would say anything. And then he kind of let it roll, let it do its stuff. Well, what he found out in that situation was, I need to step up and be a little bit more lead by example here, which I thought was very interesting, his self-realization in that. Now, not everyone has the ability to do that, nor the time, but I thought it was interesting because it makes for a model implementation. The second time around, he made it a part of all of his meetings. He was talking to people, but what he did that really impressed me, other than just being a supervisor or principal of a school and allowing everyone to communicate, but also to understand his expectations related to this program. But he also found out where the students were spending all their time after school and which faith-based organizations students attended most frequently, if they attended any on Sundays or Saturdays. So why was that important? I thought that was a brilliant stroke of genius. So what he did was he just put together a real simple little letter on letterhead, and basically put that flyer or had people deliver those to those places. So sports coaches, anybody who interacted with any of his kids, he wanted them to know that there's a program that they're doing, and please ask them to tell you about it. And here's a couple of bullet points on that program. So he gave them like a paragraph, maybe at most, and a couple of real simple, easy to digest things. And then he encouraged them, think of ways that you might incorporate these types of skills, or asking the kids what they learned into your practices or your music sessions or Sunday school or whatever it may be. And sure enough, what happened was he understood the goals and the missions. Almost all of them in that are, if you look at the charters for youth sport organizations, if you look at the charters for community organizations, it's all about the health and well-being of youth, families, and the community. And in this case, what he decided to do through this little, it really was a really touching story, because what he found is in a year, it went full circle. I thought it was really incredible. Now, this implementation was 10, 15 years ago in inner city New York, but he was telling me that a student came in, he was out by the buses one day, and I can't remember if it was an elementary or middle school student, and she said, she came up to him and said, did you know that we're learning life skills in Sunday school? He said, I did not know that. He goes, what did you learn? So all of a sudden for him, it was like, I am making a difference. But if he hadn't figured out that little easy step to just say, hey, here's what we're doing, ask me if you have any questions, but I would love it if you could at least ask my students a question or two, not by skill area, but just in general. All of a sudden it paid off. Next thing you know, he said, when I had to go around the community to get support for fundraising, volunteering for our events, all of these different things, it was so much easier. And it also helped connect the school to the community. Now, I'm not saying that everyone can have that experience, but if you look at that as a process, I was really impressed with the reflection to say, you know what, I can't just take a program, put it in and expect it to flourish. At some point, I'm going to have to become engaged and make sure that those that are implementing are appreciated, recognized, and of course, that we're all on the same page. But my expectations for this program are clear. But then also, how do I engage people outside of the school? And I thought that letter or whatever he did, that it was basically a letter to the faith-based organizations and sports clubs in the community where the kids were going for his school only. He didn't do it for the whole district, only his school, was a stroke of genius. And you know what? It paid off. And he said over time, it was so much easier to get staff engaged, and all of students were excited. He was excited. Families were excited. It started to really change things for the better. Now, I will say, though, in terms of raising awareness, students are your greatest champions. One of the most impactful sessions that I've ever attended, I was at a community fundraiser. I was helping a site raise funds to support their program. They asked me to talk about substance abuse prevention in the community and what programs or how programs like Life Skills can help. So I did that with them. What I found out, though, was they had invited a student who had told their grandmother or grandparent about life skills training, and that grandparent told the teacher, and that what the grandparent had told the teacher was that they've noticed a significant change in that child that they interact with. They seem to be a little happier. They seem to be more engaged. And she was telling me about this life skills. Well, the next thing you know, that little girl got the chance to talk not only to the principal, of course, but made her way to the school board meeting where they had her just say, we're considering a program like this. Tell us what it meant to you. And all she did was just say a few sentences. So that kind of awareness not only went from the classroom to the family to extended family, but all the way back up to the top. And I think once we start to get those things in place, now it's an ever-changing pool of things that we're constantly having to mix together. But I think as we start to learn things, we start to develop resources, templates, strategies, reflection, change what we can change, control what we can control, but also adjust, adapt, and improve various strategies and techniques. And I suggest we just start with one. I mean, how hard is it to recognize a student? Opportunities to recognize someone are everywhere. And that is one of the most impactful things that anybody can do, whether it's an employer, a caregiver, parent, or teacher, administrator, etc., is to just acknowledge a student. It doesn't have to be a lot with certificates and things like that. It can be a mention in the assembly. I've heard a story of a principal where he just decided at that one particular, I can't remember the topic of the assembly, but there was one class that was doing prevention. So he asked them to stand up and wanted to recognize them for their hard work, for trying to learn the skills to help us be better people. And we should look to them as an example. Thank you very much, class. Take a seat. That is immensely powerful. But guess what? Everyone in that area, all of the other teachers are wondering, like, well, how come I didn't get my students to get recognized? But in addition to that, it was just a simple thing, communicating with the administrator and giving them the idea to do that. But now everyone in that auditorium, and chances are the students may have gone home and told their parents or caregivers about it. It starts to catch on, and it does start to steamroll a bit, but it is going to take time, and it is going to take some effort. So celebrate everything. It doesn't always have to be a tweet, a mention. A lot of people are like, oh, we'll put this up on our Facebook post. The average amount of time that people look at Facebook posts, especially as it relates to schools and other things, is far less than we would like it to be. So I think simple things in front of their peers being recognized doesn't always have to be a photo op. Sometimes it can be as simple as the morning announcements. You've given it this a name to the assistant principal or whoever does the announcements and say, would you please recognize Elaine Smith for using her life skills in Miss Johnson's class? That's it. All of a sudden, everybody knows. Now everybody wants to be recognized. How do I do that? Start using more life skills. Start teaching. So when it comes to communities, and then I'm going to shift to a little bit of Q&A. When it comes to communities, there are a number of things that communities do. There's lots of partnerships going on. This is just an example of what happens in my community. Many, many years ago, there's a organization called Spark. It was Students and Parents Against Risk for Kids. It started with a lot of awareness, but then what happened was that became a vehicle so that when there were meetings of perhaps a PTA or PTO, they had a local expert come out and talk about mental health, the importance of good mental health on academics. Not a lot of strategies, not a lot of details, a couple of things that the parents, and they talk for 20 minutes, and that helped that resource. Like in this case, the one that you see here is Recovery Resource. They got to get their name out. But in addition to that, the parents got to talk about a topic or hear about, but also then we're connected to potential resources. It's also an opportunity maybe for the school to talk about what they're doing in the classroom or to support these through counselors and other things. So lots of events you can just piggyback onto, if you will, or you can do a specific partnership. Now, this letter or card, again, went out to the community. This isn't an actual example. I'm sorry, it is an example. It's not the actual letter. But in this case, they actually, this is what that principal did. And as somebody who's involved in youth sports, I know that when I mentioned to our board of directors for our sport team, it's swim team, we mentioned that, we really should be focusing a little bit on life skills. All of a sudden, the question came up on how we do that. And then the coaches are already working on some of these things. So I came up with a bullet point or two for each coach that just said, make sure that you commend students for being polite to one another, for being courteous, or just little things like that, where they're using social skills or communication skills, is that if a student who's not very social takes the time to takes the courage to ask a question in front of the group before you resume practice, praise them for that. Those are little things. And all of a sudden then they're like, oh, well, tell me more about that. How do I get this into my kid's school? So it starts to snowball a little bit, but those letters are a great way. One resource that we've created at Botvin LifeSkills Training that has been very, very helpful, especially these days. And again, I know I was just saying, like, well, sending a lot of documents and things is not the most effective strategy, but sometimes that's the best that you can do. So in this case, let's talk a little bit about curriculum night or parent teacher night. There's a lot of questions about various programs, life skills, social emotional learning. They, lots of acronyms flying around that people really don't understand, and they start to get defensive over something without understanding what it is in the first place. So in this case, we created a little piece that's just, this is what Botvin Life Skills is, not what it isn't. So it also talks about what the program can do. And then you can come. So this little piece is really written in a very easy to understand format for administrators. If you're considering something, here's a little bit about the program, 3 main points, a little bit about the developer, and then of course the gist of the program. That's it. And then of course, in addition, if they want more information, they can always get that. This also is very helpful at curriculum nights to give it to a parent. If you're going to be teaching life skills, you want to make sure they're on board. You may want to make sure in terms of transparency that they understand the skills that you're teaching, because sometimes we tend to fill in the gaps on our own. So rather than have any misunderstanding or misinformation, you can give them this. The LST program is about personal self-management skills, social and communication skills, resistance skills. What we're not seeing in here is reproductive health, all kinds of other hardcore substance use. It's not about usage rates. It's not about reductions of usage, graphs, charts, science. There's no mention of any percentage on here, because that's not what this is for. We want them to understand the benefits of what this program can do, not how it's been proved. If they have questions about that later, absolutely, those can be asked. This resource right here is in Spanish as well. So the Botvin LST one. Now, what I often do at curriculum night, or I encourage teachers, have a slide. So that little green slide right there might be welcome to Life Skills Training. I might tell them this is what we're doing. I have a resource for you. Keep in mind, you only usually have 5 to 7 minutes with a group of parents. Here's a paper about Botvin Life Skills Training. I also have it here in Spanish. And then also here's the scope and sequence, or the skills and goals of the program that we're going to be learning this year. In this case, I gave the middle school. All of these are downloadable from the website. So I would download elementary level 1 and put it with this document. High school, put it with this document. Middle school level 3, put it with this document, or give the document by itself. If you're also looking to get teachers on board, let's just take the awareness part out of it, but you're considering or trying to work on a partnership because you have a grant that you want to apply for, etc. This is a great first piece, because then it gives them a little light understanding of this that doesn't take a lot of time. It's a quick skim, but then they can look at the skills and goals, and then you can start to approach it from there. So again, it's just a piece that we wanted to help with this, not just awareness, but to get out of the habit of, well, there's 3 levels, there's 15 sessions, it's 50 minutes per session. Administrators start to roll their eyes a little bit at that, because everybody's strapped for time. There's never enough of it. And parents want to know about the details, but we have to be careful, because we don't want to mislead them to thinking that prevention is, I should say, the life skills training program is not really wading into areas that they would feel uncomfortable with. It gives them a context so that they can see it. This is what would be taught at a very high level Ask me if you have any questions. This also was in response to community organization and administrators being asked for this to not defend, that's the wrong word, but to explain the program. And then that's a little, it's not unfair for them in the sense that they're teaching it. They should be able to explain it, but it's unfair to their schedule because now you've got 10, 15 people that all want an individual response. That's where these resources came from. So again, you can combine them in many ways with other things from the website. Just finishing up today, my philosophy is real simple, whether it's looking to partner with someone, whether it's trying to help one individual student get recognized in a class. Really what we're wanting to do is to change you and me to nothing but we. So when we're in we mode, we are certainly in a position to be more powerful. We don't feel as isolated. We understand the mutual benefits to one another, but we're also open to change and understanding and supporting one another in ways that we wouldn't have maybe been able to do before. So in terms of awareness and buy-in, that's, changing you and me to we is critical. The other one is a lot of this is related to, even though I didn't spend much time talking about funding and budgeting, all of these things that we talked about today are directly related to what happens after a program grant has ended. Because if let me put it this way, halfway through year one, end of year two, end of year three, at the end of a grant it's not that it's never too late, but now you're trying to educate them on all these benefits and ask for budget or partnership to apply for a grant. Whereas if we do a little bit of seeding up front, it all starts to become easier. And then you have a partner that says, hey, if you have another grant, we want in. How can we be a part of this? And one of the things I love most is when I can get the mindset of a school board or anyone who's working as an organization to support kids to say, rather than looking at the budget line or the schedule and saying, why are we doing this? That magic moment for me, which is you and me to we, is really, why aren't we doing more of this? What are we doing in elementary? What is evidence-based? How come are we doing evidence-based in elementary? What program is being used in elementary? What does the science say? Who's looking into this? So all of a sudden it starts a conversation where we're fighting to stay, but people are actually saying, our biggest challenge is we need you to do more. And we'll help you with those resources. So there's a lot of opportunities for us to do this together. I'm always available if you need any, bounce any ideas and things that you want to talk about. Certainly brainstorming things. Oftentimes what happens is we try to be too dense in our words and then not always reaching people in the most meaningful way, meaning email or other things. Those are critical. But there's lots of, as someone once told me, there's an opportunity to do good everywhere at all times. And I kind of apply that to, there's an opportunity to help you understand the benefits of prevention, or even better, the benefits of students and what they're doing at all times. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them. But let me see, I got to find my Q&A real quick. You will get some information at the end of this session. So I'll make sure to get a summary of the session to Janine and Sophia so that they can distribute that and get some information to you, as well as those resources. Right now, the resource is available in English and Spanish, and we'll start there. So I think it'll be something that you'll find very helpful, especially the vision was, if I have to go meet with somebody for the first time, rather than give them a printout of a web page or something, it's like, here's this. This is what we're excited about. Give me a call and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. Or if you want, I'll be back tomorrow on campus. I'll be happy to answer any questions. So just a little conversation starter that doesn't overwhelm anybody, either the person using it or the person reading. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I'll put up my contact info. For some reason, you will get it at the end of this session, but thank you.
Good. Thank you. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat. I will also be posting a link to the eval. If you could take a moment, it won't take longer than 5 minutes to fill that out. And just tell us what you thought about the webinar today and any suggestions for any future webinars. We, of course, want to meet you guys where you're at in the topics that you're interested and would be most helpful to you. So please let us know. And I will post that in the chat in just a minute.
All right. Great.
Any last words, Janine?
I don't think, I just want to say thank you, Craig,
my pleasure.
for this webinar, for your time with all of the webinars that you've led so far this calendar year. We very much appreciate it. I think it's all been a very important information, very timely information. And you've just always been available for Pennsylvania when it comes to life skills training and programming and problem solving around it. So we thank you very much for your time with
Thank
this
you
webinar
very much
as well as
for the
otherwise.
invitation.
So,
I appreciate it.
yes,
Yeah, thank you.
I hope everyone has a wonderful week. Stay safe, dry, warm, whatever it may be, wherever you are. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.